good to see you. And when you come in, you always bring along a guest, a client who is part of the program right now at City Mission. Today you brought a young woman in named Liz. Liz, I want to welcome you to the show. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Real good. Thanks for being with us today. You know, it's always interesting because it takes a measure of courage for you to come in and sit down and tell your story. There are people out there right now, and this is why it's always powerful for me. I believe that people are listening right now, that there's someone who is like yourself and like me, someone whose life was a bit of a wreck, and something happened to change that life. So you're offering here a series of encouragement for someone out there right now. So welcome for that, and have peace with that, to know that you're being used in a good way.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe that I was meant to come today. It was kind of just like spur of the moment whenever I got asked yesterday.
Excellent.
I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Like the lady that runs the house was on the phone.
Yeah.
She was like, "Hey, do you want to do this tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah,
cool,
I will." So here I am.
So there's a happy coincidence. Okay, so then take some time. You've been clean and sober for a while?
So I started this journey back in January. I went into rehab. I was kind of, I want to say, maybe a little reluctant, you know. So I went in there and I decided that I needed more help than that. So I went into a halfway house. From there, I went to the City Mission, Avis Arbor for Women and Children. And I did have a little slip up, but now I got back on track. Yeah. So I have probably about 75 days clean currently.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's go back then. I mean, you know, in the rooms, whether it's AA, NA, you know, people always tell their story, you know, what you used to be like, what happened, and where you are now. If you don't mind, you know, you've got some time. So if you tell us your story in all honesty, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, sure. So growing up, I did have like a really good childhood. I mean, my family was great. Everybody was close. Family vacations, good Christmases. I mean, I didn't really go through anything as a child as far as like
trauma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I do, looking back now, I suffered from mental illness. I am bipolar, and, I believe that played a huge part in my childhood. I had, my emotions were very exaggerated. I, felt like I didn't fit in. I was very different from my family. I was very emotional, tended to be more like anger, and I just felt like I was acted out, you know, and so as I got older, by the time I was like a teenager, I isolated because I felt like I was almost a burden to my family for, you know what I mean? And like, I do believe my family was somewhat in denial that I did have a mental illness, that I was just acting out and I wanted attention. So I kind of like didn't allow myself to go and get the help I needed. When I was 18, I kind of decided, like, on my own, to be on my own, you know? Like, I just, like I said, I cut myself off from my family. I didn't feel a part of the family, like I fit in. It was so, I went on my own, and that's when I did get diagnosed, you know, by a doctor that I do have bipolar. You know, at a young age, I, you know, drank for the first time at 14. I started smoking weed heavily around 16. And then I would say my drinking became a little bit of a problem around 18 years old, and I would, you know, recreationally, if you'd say, do cocaine. I realized my drinking may have become a problem probably around 18, 19. I remember I was sitting at my friend's house, and it clicked in my head that, like, a year prior, like, I was raped. And, like, I blocked that out of my memory, and I didn't realize that I was raped, and it was because it was from somebody I considered a friend. And I said no, but because I didn't fight back, and I felt like I allowed it to happen, I didn't realize I was raped, you know? And so, you know, that was like the first time, I mean, that happened. Then I got into a relationship, and I remember when I met this guy, I'm like, he's perfect, like everything I want, like a man, you know? And, he turned out to be, like, very abusive. I mean, I suffered head trauma from him. I mean, like, it was really bad. I mean, emotionally, physically, mentally, sexually abusive. And it was about a 4-year-long relationship. You know, people say, well, why don't you just leave? Like, I did try to leave. As a result of me leaving multiple times, I'd got my tire slashed. He had threw actually nails and glass all down the road that my family lived on, you know. And it was just, I was scared, you know. I felt like he was seeking revenge. And it's sad because my family was affected by it. Like, I do remember one night coming home, and like, you probably couldn't even recognize myself because it was that bad. And yeah, I went through a lot with him. And this, I believe, was the first time I felt God intervened into my life. I remember, like, I woke up at his house one morning. This was in the summer of 2015. And I don't know what made me pick up the phone. Well, actually, I looked online, and I picked up and I called a rehab. And, like, it didn't something I didn't, like, really think long about. It just popped in my head. I picked up the phone and I called. They're like, we can take you today. So I went off to rehab. And from there, I cut all ties of any contact I could have had with, you know, this abusive ex-boyfriend. And I relocated. I went to a recovery house, a 3-quarter house. Kind of just got myself like a fresh start, you know. It was my first time in recovery, so I didn't really understand the severity of that. You have to like work a program, you know what I mean? So
total surrender. Yeah,
exactly. So, you know, I did end up relapsing. I had relapsed a few times, you know, since then leading up until now. My addiction took me to very dark places. I can honestly say that, you know, I had been raped multiple times because I made the choice to sell myself to get money, you know, for drugs. And I had it in my head that I was doing it because I wanted to, not because I had to. And even after so long, it did become, I felt like I was doing it because I had to. And that's whenever it messes with you, you feel like you're being violated. And it's sad because, you know, that has affected me up until this day, about how I'm a little bit of a feminist, I guess you could say, because of that, you know. So, yeah, I've lived in very bad areas. A house I was living in, someone had attempted to break into that house with a gun. That was, you know, very scary and traumatizing for me. I was unable to, like, sleep well after that. You know, I was always afraid someone was going to break into my house.
Yeah. So it sounds then, Liz, that there's years of calamity, years of just insanity, where you're just rolling forward from one thing to another. You have short stints of sobriety, but then essentially you always go back.
Yeah.
So then talk about City Mission, because you said last January, you come into the mission. You've been there for a while. You had a relapse while you were there. Okay, but you know you're clean and sober now, 70 days. Excellent. But what is it about the City Mission and your time there? You're continuing on. Obviously, you're here today, so you're committed to being there.
Yeah, I definitely am. Like, I had seen God work in my life throughout, you know, this whole process. I did get pregnant in 2018, and you know, I asked God to help me, and I do believe that she was a result of, you know, me asking for help.
Your baby.
Yes. So, I was on Suboxone. I lost my insurance. I had relapsed. So from there, I went into rehab in January. I was like, I need to further this. So I went out to a halfway house in Washington. And then after that, it was time for me to decide where I was going to go from there. And I could have went to a 3-quarter house, which has a lot more freedom. But I felt I still needed some structure. And I wanted to include my daughter in this as well, because CYS is involved.
Sure.
And so I had called, and they were like, well, we don't have a bed for women and children, but we could take you for the single woman side until we can get you there. So I was like, great, you know, and I'd gone there. I do believe I still needed the structure. It's really helped me, and to be honest, it has strengthened my relationship with God so much. I do not believe that I would be where I was if it wasn't for the City Mission, and if it wasn't for strengthening my relationship with God.
There's a big difference, right?
Huge.
Other rehabs, you know, they're doing the thing. That's fine. My higher power. But there is a difference in what City Mission presents.
Oh, yeah. Like, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous is like a spiritual-based, you know, program. But it's your higher power of your understanding, you know? But for me, like, I believe God is my higher power. And at the City Mission, like, they have chapel, we have Bible studies, where it specifically is strengthening my relationship with my higher power. You know what I mean? Like understanding God more than like in NA, they kind of focus on allowing your higher power to help you stay clean.
Right. God,
you
as
know?
opposed to some guy in the clouds.
Yeah, like they say your higher power can be like your dog. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
like
right,
whoever
right.
you want it to be that
Yeah.
you understand.
Yeah. So there obviously is a big difference here.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
So I've seen God work throughout this whole process. I mean, anytime I kind of veer off, I notice him putting me back on track.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it might be negative, and even like my relapse in September, I believe was God showing me I needed to set better boundaries. And because of the mission, I do believe strengthening my relationship with God has shown me to notice these signs that there is a God and he is working in my life to help me.
Yes.
You know, and the more you notice them, the more you see them. And without a doubt, I do know that, you know, that's
Right, the
who
wisdom
it is.
presented to you. And so the hope is that one day at a time, that one day at a time stretches out one day at a time, one day at a time. Of course, your daughter now with you. The hope for the future is you lead a clean and sober life, and with God with you, there's strength and a new life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I went down yesterday to look into starting school. So I'll have like a little meeting with this one lady to help me decide on what school I want to go to. I want to go to school for LPN. So, you know, for me, it's like this time last year, like, I mean, I was in a really bad spot. And to think now today, like, I'm happy. I have goals set. I want to go back to school and better my life. Like, you know, and the city mission helped me set me up with
With that community.
yeah, and with school and opportunities for just all kinds of things. Like, I'm so grateful.
Fabulous. Well, Liz, thanks a lot. Thanks for that
Yeah.
transparency, that story. Seriously, praying for you, for your strength, for your sobriety, for you and your daughter to move forward.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure's mine.